as of last week by Women in Exhibition. If any of you aren't familiar, Women in Exhibition is a nonprofit group that's dedicated to supporting and uplifting women across the global cinema space, whether that's people who work for vendors, exhibitors, distributors, the affiliated industries like esports. This is really an industry that in the past has been pretty overwhelmingly male dominated, and that's Women in Exhibition is just designed to take all the really awesome women across around the world that contribute to the industry and really support them and uplift them. And of course, men are invited to join WIE as well. We do have some male members as well, so we do invite the allies. But to start off, let me first introduce our sponsors, who we are so lucky and grateful to have support this mission. First up, we actually have Amy Motter from Venue Valet, who is I believe, Heather, she was our first sponsor to come on.
For this one, she absolutely is.
Absolutely. So Amy, can we bring her on here to introduce Venue Valet?
Let me go to the, who can do that? I gotta go to the.
Well, while we get Amy on, our second sponsor for this webinar is Synergy Entertainment Group, one of North America's leading chains for the cinema entertainment center. I wish there were one near me. I wish I could go, because it looks like they have some really fun stuff in addition to movie theaters, bowling, gaming, all sorts of amazing things. It's a company that's founded by women, that has a lot of women on the C-suite level, and really believes in the mission of uplifting and supporting women in the global cinema space. So thank you so much to Synergy Entertainment Group. Please do check out their website and see if they have one near you. So Amy, can we get
Yeah, she's able to talk now. Should I promote her to panelist to talk, or just let her?
I think panelist, if we can do that, right?
All right, yes. So we can see her. Amy Matters joining webinar as panelist. There you are.
Here we go.
There I am. Okay, am I there?
You're live, woman.
Beautiful. Yep.
I'm live. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having us. As mentioned, I'm Amy Motter with Call Connect by Venue Valet. We do software for technologies. We do call buttons, reporting software, operations management software, digital signage, mobile loyalty app, and quite frankly, anything custom that used to be just for dine-in cinemas, but we have been branching out due to the need that is out in the industry. So I'm happy to be here. We're happy to be supporting the WIE program, and I say program for all the things that they do. And we also are in charge of the Dine-In Cinema Summit, which just happened. And I love seeing all of you people on here that were there and participated with us. Small things about me, and I'll be quick with this. I believe that relationships are the core being of everything, and that you can learn something from every single person that you meet. And you can also learn if they're crazy or not, which is totally fine, because I do embrace the crazy when I meet crazy people. I also believe that it's important to constantly learn. People ask me at Venue Valet, what do I do? Well, I'm the director of the Dine-In Cinema Summit, but I will be making call buttons. I do installations if need be. Basically, our being at our company is whatever needs to get done, whether you're a programmer, whether you're a director of an event, or what have you, that everybody, it's all hands on deck at all times. I believe in loyalty. I think loyalty is incredibly important in business. That's something that goes to my deep core. I also believe that thin mints, one sleeve is a complete serving. So if anybody wants to argue with me about that, that's just, I believe that. So a box is 2 servings. And then I also believe in baseball, milk duds, the beach, and Diet Coke. So that's what my core beliefs are when it comes to my passions out there. And then finally, I'm a mom of 3. I have a 23-year-old son, a 17-year-old daughter, and a 15-year-old daughter. And then the most amazing dog that God created. So you guys can argue with me about that, but that's really how it is. And then finally, interesting tidbit about me. My husband owns the company, I along with him, and we have been together since 8th grade. So, and I know we don't look a day over 15, so you can just compliment me on that.
Well, I'm stuck on the milk duds. I'm a junior mint person, but you know what? We can argue about that at CinemaCon. I'm looking forward to
Well, and here's my thing. My philosophy is milk duds, they take longer to eat, so therefore you don't gain as many calories. Like, I truly
Huh.
believe that. And it makes me like, in my brain, I can last through an entire movie because my jaw will eventually get like raw from eating my milk duds.
Like welded shut. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it does.
So Amy, throw up a link to your happy hour this afternoon in the chat so people can come if they haven't attended before.
Oh, yes, I will do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and yes, we also host a happy hour. We started when the pandemic first started, and we meet every Tuesday at 4:00. And there's you don't even have to be in the dine-in cinema industry. That's not it at all. But really, we are just want people to get together and we vent, we laugh, we drink, we visit, we cry. Well, we did cry in the beginning. We don't cry anymore. But it's really just to keep the industry, keep your friends out there. And because of, technology and the way that it is, it's much easier to stay in touch with everybody. So yes, I will put that in the chat.
Okay. And it's 4:00 Central.
It is 4:00 Central. Yes. And it's free.
Oh, I'm in. I'll do it. I'm there. Amy, I really love what you were saying about this being a people industry and loyalty and getting to know different people and getting to know if they're crazy or not, crazy in a good way versus crazy in a bad way. That really kind of connects in a strange way to panel parity, because one of the things that is really core to this initiative, and I'll let I'll let the panelists talk about this in more detail, is really bringing in some new blood, bringing in some new ideas. So it's not just the same people saying the same things at the same shows. But let me first off introduce our panelists here today. I'm Rebecca Polly. I am the deputy editor at Box Office Pro and the vice president of Women in Exhibition. Joined today here by Heather Blair, who is the co-founder of Women in Exhibition. She works with the Cinema Entertainment Alliance.
Cinema Esports Alliance.
I knew that. Sorry, acronyms. If you know Heather, Heather is the consummate entrepreneur and hustler, and was really able to help us bring this initiative together. We also have Jackie Brenneman, who was recently promoted to executive vice president of Data. Is that correct?
That is correct. Executive Vice President, General Counsel, and President of the Cinema Foundation.
If you work for a cinema that got your SVOG money, I hope you sent Jackie a box of chocolates or something like that. We also have our second equally wonderful Heather Morgan of Harkins Theaters, and most recently the first ever female president of the Will Rogers Institute. In that group's, I think, 83 years at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hi everybody.
And we also have HAT, Influx Worldwide, who HAT and Influx have been really great supporters of Women in Exhibition. And I know that, as I mentioned before, men are welcome in the group, men are welcome to collaborate with us. And really, we need to all come together, as an industry. And I think that HAT is a great example of that. But first, let me start off with kind of the obvious question here. Heather, what is panel parity really? What is this initiative? What's the genesis of it? Can you give us a little bit of background?
Yeah, so this is Heather number one, Heather number two.
So all panel should be 50% Heather going forward. That's what panel parity is, yes.
What kind of inspired me initially to even think about this when we first formed as Women in Exhibition and we're looking for initiatives, it was something that a individual said to me quite a few years ago, that they thought it was hilarious when they saw me on a panel with all those old white guys and I was the tall blonde girl. And I thought, why is that hilarious? It should be the norm. We are 53% of the population. And then I realized it's a little bit deeper than that it's actually difficult finding the right speakers because it's not been consistently done before. So who do you reach out to? Who do you know that fits the right description to speak on a panel can be somewhat challenging. So we thought, well, if we actually create our own initiative where we're asking the people who are members of WIE to let us know, 1, do you want to be on a panel? 2, are you comfortable moderating a panel? 3, are you good with curating, moderating, or being on a panel? let us know. And lastly, let us know what you're capable of talking about. And if we put this all together in a place that show promoters, trade show people, anybody who's coordinating a group of executives who speak, they can find us through our panel parity. So that's why it exists, and we're going to take it from there. Oops, you are muted.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's going to happen eventually. Jackie, I was wondering if I could get your take on panel parity, because you know, you, like I said before, you really inspired me to be interested in it, but then also you work on the other side, obviously, with NATO helping to put on CinemaCon. What's your kind of take on, I don't want to say what's been wrong with things up to this point, but why is something like panel parity necessary?
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. And thanks to Rebecca and Heather for having me on this panel. I am really passionate about this issue, and I will try to be brief. Everyone who knows me knows that when I am passionate about something, I have a lot of thoughts. So, but look, diversifying and getting to parity is something that everyone says is important. But yet there are insurmountable barriers sometimes, it seems. I mean, I will even say I'm looking at the attendee list here, and it's almost only women that decided that this was a relevant topic for them to listen to. And I feel like that is really troubling. What I will say is kind of two main components of what this means to me. One is that in our efforts to try to bring more women into leadership within NATO, for example, one of the things that we hear constantly is, well, I've never heard of that person. Like, how do I know that they're qualified? How do I know that they belong here? There are a long list of men that I know who have been wanting these leadership opportunities for 15, 20 years. It's not fair to just pass them over, you know? And I hear that and I understand that. But the problem is visibility, not tenure, visibility, not ability, visibility, not desire and talent. So what we need to do is increase visibility, but it's very difficult. You know, I work, you know, again with NATO on panels, and it is not for lack of trying. I mean, we care deeply. The whole CinemaCon team really works very hard to diversify panels. It's something that matters to the men running that group deeply. Like I have nothing but amazing things to say about everyone at NATO and the efforts that have been undertaken. But you know, you don't know everyone, right? And these are busy people trying to put on really important shows, and they need to make sure that the panelists that they're selecting bring, you know, the weight of the title, bring the weight of their company, bring, you know, this element of gravitas to the table. And so if you've never heard of someone, then do they have all of those elements? And I believe the answer is absolutely yes. I believe you bring someone to the table that you know is dynamic and you know is intelligent and you know brings some sort of cognitive diversity, not even just gender diversity, right? The idea that you've had a different kind of life experience that you're bringing to the table will help our industry. We need different ideas. And so if we can, through the Panel Parity Project, if this group can solve one of those significant barriers to actually making panels diverse, which is, here are people, if you really truly want a diverse panel, send us an email and we will give you, you tell us what you want and we will identify candidates who are legitimately qualified. You know, they are not token women to be on your panel. These are qualified women that will offer a different perspective and make your panel better. And so and then in turn, all of a sudden now there is visibility. I'm sure Heather could speak to the amount of, you know, emails and things that she is now receiving because of her new title and the visibility that she's getting from that. You know, all of a sudden you are legitimized. And so we need to be able to be providing that service. And I believe that panel parity will make significant headroads in creating that visibility.
I did it again. My God, I'm glad you brought up, Jackie, that issue or that question of tokenism, because you don't want to think that there are people, you know, out there who think of it as, oh my God, what I have to have 50% women. I have to fill a quota. I'm picking someone because they're a woman. Like, no, I'm picking someone because they're qualified. So, I mean,
can I just say my little piece on that? Sorry,
please,
but like,
please.
that whole concept is, kind of a demeaning concept, but you know what? I am fine. I will let the record show. I will be your token woman. You want a woman on your panel and you don't know who to think of, I'll be your token woman. And you know what will happen when you put me on that panel? The fact that I'm different will actually be beneficial. Sometimes that the part about me that is a token is the part about me that is valuable. Maybe that token is a valuable, different perspective. So fine. If people want to whisper behind my back that I only have whatever I have because I'm a woman, wait till I'm in the room with you and you will change your mind.
Mm-hmm. And wait until there are 3 women on the panel, or like more than, wait until we make that progress. Hat, I guess you're a token man on this panel. Speaking of that,
I was just going to say, speaking of.
Well, I mean, I know obviously you and Influx have been great supporters of Women Exhibition. As a founder of Influx, you go to all these shows. You're really involved and invested in the kind of a wider trade show landscape. I mean, I was wondering, in the interest of getting perspectives from different genders, could you give us why you think panel parity is important to you?
Absolutely. Look, everybody talks about how, most of these events these days, and Jackie, pardon me, but, the general consensus amongst people who attend these events has been that, the narrative or the kind of the things that are said tend to be fairly similar, and not just at the same events each year, but at the same events year after year, right? And while it could possibly be attributed to the fact that you certainly aren't necessarily in an industry like say crypto where things are changing at rapid pace, maybe that's why there's not much to talk about. But I think there's also something to be said about the fact that your panels have essentially been composed of the same people, right? And I'm trying to be very politically correct whatever I say right now, but the fact is, I think bringing in women, of course, like Jackie said, all the different things in terms of diversity. But I think beyond that, I think the quality that I enjoy most, the 2 things that I enjoy most when I listen to women on a panel. Firstly, is the empathy that they can bring to any subject, right? They bring educated empathy, which I absolutely enjoy. And the second thing is, most men who are on a panel tend to be there to protect their turf. That seems to be the singular intent and motive. Mm-hmm. Is I'm here to protect my turf, to wear my stripes, and that's why I'm there.
I'm the thought leader. I'm the expert.
Right. With women, what I love is they seem to typically have a license to say whatever they want, and there's far less risk of being censured by whoever they report to, or their organization, or whatever it may be, and therefore they tend to speak and say what they want, but in a very empathetic manner. Mm-hmm. And that's really refreshing. I absolutely enjoy it, and I really wish that there's more participation by anyone who meets those criteria. But it just so happens that the male race is just not as qualified to be that awesome, I guess. So and therefore we need panel parity. I love I mean, listen, I was, I think, amongst the first 3 people who heard about women in exhibition from Heather. I would dare to say I was number 2. Bernadette was probably number 1. Bernadette was 1.
Number 1. You were number 2.
Correct. And this was the Alto Bar at CinemaCon. So and I was like, count me in whatever way possible, right? And then I heard of panel parity, and I was like, this is amazing. Some level, I feel bad that we need to even stand up, have to ask for it, right? Or even you talk about it this vehemently, but like Jackie said, so what? I mean, if that's what it takes for us to move forward, somebody's got to do it. We'll be the first to do it, right? And therefore, I think more power to all of you guys. You're amazing in all of your capacities. And I'm happy to do whatever needs to be done to support this initiative, this group. And like the Rembrandts might have said, I'll be there for you.
It can definitely be uncomfortable. And like you said, Hat, you kind of do have to be very deliberate in how you phrase things sometimes, so you don't have this perception that you're trying to take something away from somebody who's had this position, who's been on this panel. But like you say, if you've been on the same panel talking about the same subjects, you're going to be saying the same things. I mean, just aside from the fact that it's important to give people equal opportunities, you want to bring some fresh blood into the mix at some point.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. Hey, listen, I think that's the reason that I'm getting a bit of this opportunity myself, right? Because I'm fairly new to the scene in the US. I mean, I've only been this side from 2018. I think a lot of people, are probably seeing me or hearing me for the first time, and maybe that's my token, right? And I'll take it. I'll take it, right? So.
But Heather Morgan, I was so excited that we were able to get you on this panel, because not only Heather, she's awesome, she's just like generally an awesome person, but also you have some pretty recent, like, direct experience with this sort of thing, not directly to do with panels, but since you came on board with to be the first female president of Will Rogers. Now Will Rogers has its first ever all-female executive committee. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about, kind of how that came together, what that means to you, what that means to Will Rogers?
Yeah, the reason, so I will say that move was somewhat controversial, actually. And as we would expect, anytime you try to impact change in any sort of significant way, there are going to be a fair number of people who are uncomfortable with that change. And so, we had some learnings from that in terms of how we communicated what we were changing. But the reason why I think that was so significant and important to do is because, first of all, there has been a problem with equity and representation in our industry, and specifically within the Will Rogers charity. And that was discussed openly amongst the former leaders of the charity. They're aware of it. They just weren't quite sure what to do about it, especially not in, broad strokes. And so when we were putting together the executive leadership team, again, to Jackie's point about token women, we weren't searching for women exclusively. We were looking for really established leaders who are passionate about charity work in our industry and who wanted to advance our goals. And, we found 6. We could have found 100 if we needed to, or as many as you like, because again, we're out there. It's just more an issue of visibility. And even so I think with making that change, one of the misconceptions, and this isn't just specific to Will Rogers, this is kind of overall, but when you're making a focus and an emphasis on putting more women in places of leadership, people can incorrectly get the assumption that men are no longer welcome. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So as an example, I am now the president of Will Rogers and the first female to have that role because the men in our industry saw fit to put me in that position. And Hat is on this panel because he supports these efforts. We will not achieve parity without the support of our male counterparts. And so gender equity and parity is a conversation for both men and women to actively participate in. And it's worth mentioning that even with an exclusively female executive board, our board of trustees, which is our executive board plus all of our trustees, is still 75% male. So again, the leadership of the charity is now female. And I think, that's going to be important because it's going to help us perpetuate having more representation and more balance to the charity overall as we move forward. I mean, there's a pipeline problem, not just in our industry or our nation, but in our world, where 48% of entry-level positions are held by women, but by the time you get to the C-suite, it's only 21% of women who hold those positions. We have a pipeline issue where women get seeded out along the way. And we could discuss the reasons for that, throughout the course of an entire hour-long panel. So, we don't need to get into it now, but when you put females, qualified, knowledgeable, passionate females in positions of leadership, they can help open that pipeline and try to alleviate some of those difficulties that sometimes keep women from having a seat at the table. So that's what we've done recently. We're just going to build a bigger table.
You mentioned the issue of the pipeline problem, and I agree. We could totally just talk about that all day. So, but I do want to go into it a little bit because half of this panel parity project is having this database to make it easy, to make it painless, where you say, okay, I'm putting together a panel. I don't just want it to be the same 4 dudes it's always been. We're a resource that's here for you to find qualified, expert, knowledgeable women who are able to fill that role. But the other half of it, before we get to that, is we are inviting and asking women from all corners of the industry to throw their hat in the ring. And I find that, I mean, Heather, you particularly, I mean, I know you've encouraged a lot of up and coming women in this industry. And I mean, there are a lot of people, myself included at one point, who are like, I can't moderate a panel at CinemaCon. Like, I can't, I've never done this. I'm not comfortable doing this, not feeling the confidence, feeling the imposter syndrome. What would what would you say to that, to women who are maybe like, oh, well, I don't know, I'm an expert, but I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I should be on a panel because that's public speaking. That's a different thing.
I can tell you right now, somebody who's in our attendance right now is Teresa English from TK Architects, was tasked with being on a panel at Cine Europe. And I thought the girl was going to absolutely lose her lunch and nerves. And I sat in the front row to champion her on. I can tell you just a few years later, she's now on panels I put on, and that woman rocks it. Her confidence has grown just tremendously since then. And I got to tell you, you just got to try. You got to be willing to say imposter syndrome, whatever. Mary, who's also with us, was saying, fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it if you're nervous, because I think women are a little bit afraid of making a mistake and having everyone point and say, you didn't do that right. Maybe I've just been, I've lived my life doing a lot of things wrong the first time, many, many times. And I just sort of laugh and go, well, that's just sort of my thing. And I just try again, and I try again, and I try again. Well, now since I'm doing this regularly, I'm not uncomfortable, where I used to be super uncomfortable. I was always really nervous. Now I'm like, okay, bring it on. So I hope that other women will say, I have something to say. I have something of value. I've got a different perspective. And I can guarantee you, every one of these ladies who are sitting here in this audience have thought, you've listened to someone and you just wanted so bad to raise your hand because you had another point of view and you just wish you were up there to share it. And now we're going to make that an option.
Or sometimes you watch panels and you're like, oh, that person, whether it's whoever it is, like, oh, I could do better than that. There's always that part of it.
That could have been me. I could have been a contender. Yeah.
I mean, Jackie, what's your take on that from kind of like the behind the scenes CinemaCon? I mean, well, as someone who puts panels together, do you find like, is that a problem with the pipeline of people saying like, oh no, I can't do that?
So that doesn't tend to be the problem, but I think, speaking as a person who's only been on a couple of panels myself, and I saw my colleague Erin von Hetzendorf was on here, and she knows that before I did my first panel, I was so nervous because it feels like every time when you're a woman and you're going up there, you're speaking, you're bringing that to the table too. They're judging whether women can do it. So I felt like, if I messed up, it made other women look bad. It made me look bad. It would hurt my career to just not be perfect. And I will say that I have to moderate a panel at CinemaCon this year. It's my first time ever moderating. And the good thing about this group was my first instinct wasn't, I can't do this. My first instinct was, I'm going to call Rebecca and I'm going to call Heather, and they're going to help me, because now I have people that will tell me how to do this successfully. And I think that's a major difference. It doesn't mean I'm not nervous, but I feel a lot more confident taking on something that feels high profile and something that feels like there's a weight of the world on my shoulders, but I know I have allies. And so groups like this and, people like you make that a lot better. And I do think we're going to have to find the brave, or find the people that aren't brave, but because we're having these conversations, maybe they'll feel comfortable saying, I'm not brave, I'm terrified, but I want my career to take off in a way that I need it. I need this public exposure to get to the next level. Can you help me fake it until I, as I saw in the chat, become it? And that's what it is, right? This is a famous thing, right? Where women before applying for a job want to have 100% of the criteria. Men will apply with 60. But it's not just that women it's not the imposters. A woman who applied with 60% of the criteria would never get the job. And a man with 60% could. So it's not just that we're afraid. We actually know that
there's a reason for us to be like, historically, there's a reason for us to think, oh, if we don't do this, like
right.
backwards and in heels.
We are being judged differently. And that's okay, because there are a lot of us who are willing to take that on, and eventually it won't be the problem anymore. But
I do want to mention that the development committee has talked about bringing on one of the programs about public speaking. And if this group that's here thinks it's a good idea and they would attend it, put a note in the chat and let us know, because I think that could be really interesting for us to bring on somebody who could give us a little insight on public speaking and traits and tricks and ways to be better at it. So if everybody thinks that's a good idea, let's see that in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important what you said there, Jackie, about, you don't necessarily want to be on the panel because, oh, they need a woman. I mean, maybe you do, like you said, I'm fine with that, but like it's a career move. It's a good thing for your career and for your development and to develop that skill set. And sometimes like you do just have to get out in front of it and just kind of grit your teeth. And I know the first panel I moderated at the GMA convention, I was terrified. Just like, oh my, not only do you have to say things perfectly, but like you have to, you gotta look the part. You have to, I don't think, men going into panels they're not wearing Spanx,
Now, Hat purposely chose a woman to be on this panel at the Dine-In Summit for a reason.
Wow, that's exactly actually what I wanted to get in if I got a chance. And I'm surprised you actually remember that, Heather.
Yeah.
When I was talking to Amy, the wonderful Amy who was out here, a big shout out to everybody at Venue LA. They do amazing things. And of course, the Dine-In Cinema Summit. So yeah, a couple of weeks ago, was it 3 weeks ago, when we were out there in Houston at the Dine-In Cinema Summit, I hosted a panel discussion. And while I was trying to pick my panel, listen, that's where the CEO hat comes on, fun. But where I'm trying to put on my best clients because I want to make an impression. But then after a point, I was like, hold on, I've got these two really powerful men, but I really want to balance this out. I don't want this to become a game of one-upmanship. Or, I want it to be, I wanted to have, like, if I was going to be the audience and listening to something that I wouldn't enjoy, I don't want to be the one putting it together, right? So I wanted to make sure I put together a show that people would take away thinking, hey, you know what, that stood out. And I was thinking about who I wanted on the panel, and we were discussing something very specific, which is comparing the cinema business in the East and the West. Because I guess that's what I represent, right? I am the sort of bridge between the East and the West, having done business across the globe. So I decided to bring on Tess Manchester. Now, Vista is probably my number one competitor in my space. But at the same time, it was more important to have someone who was from an international company that was able to bring a similar perspective to my business, but from the other side. And guess what she did? She got on there when everybody was talking about things like spend per head and conversions and all of that. She's like, guess what? I love going to the movies because it makes me really happy and I love my popcorn. And she's the president of a tech company, the largest tech company in the space. I love it. That's the freedom. That's the sort of liberation that you get from having someone who can say what they like, yet it was meaningful. And I know the way I said it might be out of context, but she phrased it and framed it in a manner that actually rounded the subject really well. And yeah, I absolutely enjoyed having Tess on the panel. So I'd strive to have more women on my panels, especially because they bother with their hair and how they look. So that's important as well. So.
Well, I think it's super important when we talk about this issue. You definitely want to be wary of preaching to the choir, I guess you could say. I mean, most of the people at this webinar here are women, thanks to all the men who have joined and wanted to hear more about this topic. But I mean, both Heather's, Jackie, Hat, and anyone who wants to chime in on this, you don't like to think that there's pushback to the idea of just having a woman on a panel, but there is, and sometimes it's behind closed doors and sometimes it's not. What's your experience with changing people's minds on this, that it's not just like, oh, women are trying to get graspy and take things away from me?
I mean, this is going to sound cynical, but I don't mean it that way. I don't think you can necessarily change people's minds. I think there is, I mean, we saw it with this whole Supreme Court, statement that Biden made. There's such an entrenched, ingrained, historic language around moves to diversity, again, it comes to the qualifications, the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that really don't play out whenever a man is selected for a job. It's just assumed he's qualified, even when, again, he has 60% of the qualifications. I don't think we can change that part of the dialogue, but what I think we can do is just add more qualified women to the mix, right? So when there is a search committee, if at least that search committee can identify one woman and with 7 men, that's at least progress. And at least by being in that list, they have the seal of approval as being qualified, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to take a long time. And again, it does require women to be doing public facing things, which, as I mentioned, it's hard to do that when people don't know you. But taking more risks, we have to work twice as hard, but it is what it is. I don't know if we can really change that. I think it's a generational thing. I think that it will naturally change over time, because I think men that are millennials or younger don't carry the exact same level of bias.
Unconscious bias. Yeah.
I think that I'm a mother. My husband does like all the cooking, and like I know lots and lots of couples where the husband is equal or greater in the child rearing, and so their job takes a hit too. So there's a level of, as Hat mentioned, this level of empathy. Men now are having to gain empathy because their wives, their partners are working, and so you can only gain empathy through experience. And so a generation before just didn't. They care, but they don't have empathy, and they don't fully realize the barrier. So I think some of this is just time.
I do want to mention something too. Who here was at CinemaCon and saw the panel that Patty Jenkins was on?
So good.
She rocked it. And she was controlling that panel. The guys were just like, whatever you say, and she had great valid points, some stuff. I mean, I saw a lot of social media push back on some of the things that she said that were a little bit kind of
because they took 2 sentences out of context and weren't actually there and didn't actually listen to the whole thing. But okay,
but we saw it and it was kind of sensationalized a little bit. But I was in awe of her on this group with some major leaders, from Chris from Fox and Mark Zarate from Cinemark and Rolando from Marcus, and then Patty was there running the show. So she's not afraid to stand up. She's not afraid to make a few people get a little annoyed. She didn't care. She's like, I got a voice and I'm going to use it.
Yeah, and in fact, that's such a good example, because you realize if TRPs were a thing for CinemaCon, watching Chris and Rolando go at each other with their gloves off, right, was essentially everything that every broadcaster signed up for. And still Patty was able to come in and say, yo, I'm the man on this panel, right? And that's really, really, really good. And that's a fantastic example. But just coming back to, when Rebecca posed that question, it just made me uncomfortable even hearing it. Because my first thing in my head is, I don't know who y'all have been hanging out with, but you got to go hang out with people like me, because we don't even think like that, right? And then Jackie said it, right?
But you know dudes who do. I guarantee you know dudes who do. We all know dudes who do.
I do not. And you know what? Maybe I do not because I'm so new to this side of the industry in the States. And I love that. I'm happy to be that person. I don't want to meet those people.
Well, Heather Morgan, not to put you on the spot, but you mentioned had the all-female makeup of the executive board was controversial. And I was wondering if you could speak to how you do deal with it and how you do react when maybe you have that pushback from some quarters.
Yeah, so I think part of what it is just communicating very openly and very clearly about what we're trying to do and why. The conversation around gender equality still makes some people so very, very uncomfortable. The conversation around racial equality makes some people very uncomfortable. If you're a white man, you really sometimes don't know where your place is. It's like, well, they're all mobilizing and I don't know if they're against me, if they don't want me to be part of it. I don't know if I should have any role in that conversation because am I the other? And so
should I have a voice? Should I shut my mouth and keep quiet?
Right. Like even if you're not opposed to equality, maybe you just don't know if you should be an active participant because you don't know where you belong in that conversation. And again, I'll say it, the faster we get everyone's buy-in and support around achieving equality and representation, the faster we're going to get there. And so a part of what I do is just openly communicating about what we're doing and why it's necessary. I mean, on a national perspective, 87% of companies say that diversity is a key strategic priority for their company. And yet it remains to be seen that for every 100 men you find in roles of leadership, you'll only find 37 women. And the global gender parity index, it has only improved. So 0 is zero parity and 1 is perfect parity. The score is somewhere around, it was 0.6 in 2015. It's now something like 0.61. It's improved 0.1% over the last 5 years. So, I mean, we talk, and that's given how much we've had conversations around equality over the last 5 years, but the change happens so slowly that at this rate, we're going to achieve perfect parity in 200 to 250 years. Ideally, I'd rather not wait that long.
Well,
So
climate change is going to wipe us all out before then anyway, so.
Right, well, depending on what side of the political
Different issue,
aisle you
different
fall
issue,
on,
yeah.
you're right.
Different issue.
Aliens are coming up, I can tell.
Right, that's a whole separate panel. But yeah, the point being is that some people are uncomfortable with steps being taken to increase diversity because they just don't know what that means for them. And that's where it's important to have conversations like, yes, we may have an exclusively female executive board for Will Rogers, but the entire leadership group is still 75% male. No one is trying to exclude anyone from the conversation. We just need to make some strategic moves so that we are all welcome. We're not trying to alienate anyone, speaking of aliens. So yeah, it's about conversating. And you have to Jackie's point, some people are not comfortable engaging in those conversations because historically, and we're going a ways back, but historically there were only room for a few diverse people at a table. So if you had a big table of white men leading, you might have one ethnic minority invited in, you might have one woman invited in. So that person was very conscious of not being a member of the majority and was very interested in protecting their seat at that table. Therefore, you don't want to anger anyone. You don't want to be too controversial. You want to really go with the flow so that you get to keep your spot. The more and more comfortable we get, we need to ruffle some feathers because we need to open the doors for others. We can't be focused on protecting the one little niche that we've carved out for ourselves. We have to bust open the doors so that there's more room for others. Thank you, Jackie.
It's my favorite Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote is to paraphrase. Someone once asked me, what's the number of women on the Supreme Court like that I would be satisfied with? What's enough? And she said 9. Because historically, since the beginning of the country, it's been 9 men. So what's like, clearly you have no problem with all one gender. So yeah, let's have 9 women on the Supreme Court.
Well, if anybody doesn't remember, you're living under a rock, when the movie All the Money in the World was reshot and the 2-star talent that got paid for doing the reshoots, one got $1 million and the other one got 1,000. Guess which gender got the $1 million and which gender got the 1,000 with the same agent?
Well, didn't it come out then that like it's because, or someone said at one point that it was because, oh well, the man really like wanted to hardly negotiate, and the woman just kind of was happy to be friendly and get along. And it's like to what you were saying, Heather Morgan, of like, you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody or a large number of people nowadays who don't agree that there's a problem. It's just when you have to actually do something to fix the problem, people get like, oh no.
Yeah, like, nobody wants to be that person on the hook for trying to change the status quo because it's hard work and it can make you unpopular for a while and it's a little bit labor intensive. But I mean, there are all kinds of, I've talked to so many women in our industry for, a decade that have said, I would like to have a seat at the table, or I don't know how to advance my career, or, and then when we get down to what it is that they're doing to try to make strides, they're kind of just staying and doing work and waiting for an opportunity to come to them. People aren't necessarily comfortable raising their hand and saying, I'm ready. I want this. I want to lead. Choose me. Put me on the front line.
Like if
Instead,
I
they
just keep my head down and do my job, then
I'll be recognized, I'll be chosen. And it just doesn't work like that. If you want to become someone that people are listening to, then you have to start talking and risk what comes with that.
And I want to mention what you said about, the people that you associate with. And I do want to say that, and I mentioned this, but I want to be really explicit, that there are a lot of men in this industry that are allies. And that will ask questions, and that if you ask them to come and support, they will come and support, and that do not bring with them the same kinds of biases. And if they do, they're aware of them and want to improve them. But they're not yet gatekeepers. And so they're also therefore not gate openers. So I just think that's why I say some of this is going to be time, because I see a lot of men that I respect greatly and that I believe respect me greatly, and not because I'm a smart woman, but because they think I'm smart and they think I'm passionate. And I've had my entire career is because I've had men that vouch for me, right? And I'm very aware of that. I've actually never really had a female mentor. So because there aren't a lot of women to be in that position. So there's more and more of that coming. When I started at NATO, my boss, like he was Patrick Corcoran, who's our chief communications officer. We were in a meeting. I'd been at NATO for like a month, and a woman dismissed me because I wasn't a man and because of my title. He saw it. He gave me a look, and I was like, "Oh, this is a man who understands." I didn't have to explain anything. He saw exactly what happened, and there are people like that.
So I just realized after.
No one's ever accused me of being smart, but.
I just realized after we finished that last segment that I spoke that what I meant to say and what I said was perhaps different. What I really meant to say was, of course, I know these guys exist. They are the majority. They are the majority. What I was trying to say was, I think you are the company that you keep, right? And I don't choose to surround myself because I had the option to choose whose company I keep, right? And I think that's what I was trying to say, was that anybody that I would choose to befriend or put on my panel will not bloody hell not have a problem with me choosing a woman to sit beside them.
And if someone did say that to you, I know that you would push back on it.
Absolutely.
Like listen,
that person doesn't deserve to be on my panel. I mean, sorry, that's not at all what I meant. Of course, the majority of the people. Yeah, no, I just realized later, maybe I was not clear enough, I guess. But, the majority of the people, I mean, listen, I know it. I know, listen, I'm 37. I feel so bad as to how old I've grown. And I feel so good about life when I'm at CinemaCon or when I'm at one of these events, right? Because I'm a minority in terms of being fairly young. And then there's we've got to understand this, like while we talk about the importance of women in the industry, et cetera, we've also got to acknowledge especially in the men, there are very few young men who are choosing this industry. There are very few young men who are choosing to be a part of the cinema industry, not as much as before, and definitely not as much as perhaps is required. So therefore, I see that the few young men who do exist these days tend to, want to be around people like me. And if I'm not here saying the things that I'm saying and supporting women, supporting you guys, for just having the place that you deserve, we're just going to have another generation of the exact same men that we've just, hopefully said goodbye to, or on the way of saying goodbye to, right? So no, I totally get the problem, which is why I'm here, which is why I'm batting for this, right? But I just don't think that's necessarily the generation that I want to foster into the industry.
Well, as we approach that hour mark, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. And meanwhile, I'll kind of go around and ask if anyone has any closing comments. Heather, if you want to say anything about like next steps, if you're interested in panel parity, if you're interested in, what can you do? Yep.
Yeah, number one, when we're talking about the men that support us, we have a couple of our members who I know are on here, from Jim Cook, who's been an avid supporter. John Sullivan's been coming to a lot of our events. And lately, a newer join was John Marmo from Screen Vision. And we posted the WIE member spotlight. So anybody that's in this group that's listening, if you have not filled out your form by now, if I see you in public, I'm going to probably spank you. Because we want to focus and spotlight our members, because there's something fabulous about each and every one of you. And John, we posted, and he said he got so many people that commented and sent him private messages that really touched him. So he was really happy with us bringing some attention to him. So we absolutely want to support our fellow men in the industry who are here to support us and lift us up. So glad everybody came. I also want to say, put the word out there. If you work for a company, please reach out to us and let us know you're willing to sponsor WIE so we can do more programs and lift up a little bit. So we've been living right now pretty much on membership dues only. And y'all that have paid know that we've only been charging $25. So we have very little money and we're doing great things. So come on board and say we want to support WIE and help us grow and add to what we're doing right now and bring in more programs and go back to the people who are coming in, like Hat mentioned, the young folks, making sure that they're represented, more of an equal representation, and letting them know whether you're female or male, we are here to be diversified and join together. That's
and reach out to your female coworkers and be like, yo, you would kick butt on a panel. You need to that's supporting and uplifting and just really spreading the love. And as you mentioned earlier, Heather, talking each other through borderline panic attacks when we're doing our first public speaking in front of a large number of people. Well, Jackie, Heather Morgan, did you have anything else that maybe you wanted to touch on, or because like you said, we could talk about this forever, but I know everyone's incredibly busy. So, well,
Jackie, do you want to take it?
I mean, I was just going to say, I just think we should stop talking now, and I just can't wait to put on my next panel and just have it all women, and then I'll be happy to be the only man on that panel, and I know I'm going to come out with a richer experience, and so will my audience. So yeah.
Sorry, Jackie, go ahead.
I'm really personally excited. I think groups like this help just bring people together that, again, haven't had the spotlight, so we wouldn't have even known. I wouldn't have known about anyone. I mean, I'd never really worked with Heather before, and her promotion, the big Will Rogers announcement, it's a big deal, right? And like elevating women, getting women in a group together is the only way that they exist. And it's the only way you can start making those calls. So, anyone who, wants to ever get together with me, talk about any of these things, please know my door's open. And, if you are scared, if you have anything that you're stressed out about, there are a lot of allies out there, and that's how we all succeed.
And I think the one thing that I would add as far as closing thoughts is the reason why we're talking about gender parity at all, and the reason why it's so important is because if there are young women in our industry that are still working their way up from all levels. We have people working in the theaters. We have people working in, the distribution centers. We have people working throughout our industry that want to have an eye on having a successful career in this industry. And if they look at the people who've been successful in the industry and none of them look like them, it makes it very difficult for them to imagine that they can have a successful future in this industry. We need strong leaders, and that means we need to be diverse and welcoming and representative. There's also plenty of research showcasing that companies that have diverse leadership have greater financial profits. I mean, there's actually an impact to your revenues based on the diversity of your company. So, and I'm assuming that that's going to go for our Will Rogers charity as well. I'm anticipating that we're going to be more successful than we have in years past because we are now more diverse. And as we get increasingly diverse, we're going to get increasingly more successful. So, it makes sense for so many reasons, and we should all care about it for so many reasons. It isn't just because it's the right thing to do. There are social and socioeconomic impacts to these decisions.
Yeah. And I do have one more thing I just thought about too. If you are in the middle of your career and want to make a career change and somebody's only known you in one position, it's really hard for you to be thought of for anything else. But if you're invited to speak on panels and people are recognizing you for what you have to say, you're thought of a lot more frequently and job opportunities will come to you. So for that, we hope that you'll raise your hand and not be afraid, because that's the way you could actually decide and make your own paradigm shift when you're ready.
That's a great point to end it on. Thank you so much, Heather. Like, just the importance of throwing your hat in the ring. Thank you so much. No, that wasn't even intentional. Oh my gosh. Thanks so much. Thanks so much to our panelists.
Stop, Jackie.
Thanks to everyone for being with us today.
Throw a hat in the ring. Oh my goodness.
I don't know if I could lift you, Hat. I'm not that strong. Like I can't lift a human being. Thank you all so much.
Make sure
Please
look
go
at
to panelparity.com, go to womeninexhibition.com. We would love to have you so much. And everyone, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
go to the chat. There's signups in there.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.
Bye all.
What?